Coming up on Network Africa, the African Union says COVID-19 pandemic is a major threat to developing countries' efforts to meeting their development goals. South Africa prepares for level 3 lockdown come Monday, June the 1st. Plus, the United Nations marks the International Day of United Nations Peacekeepers with the theme, Women in Peacekeeping, a Key to Peace. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. Africa has recorded 130,270 cases of coronavirus. From that figure, more than 53,000 people have recovered and the death toll stands at over 3,700. South Africa still has the highest number of cases in Africa with 27,403. It's followed by Egypt with 20,793, then Algeria at 8,997. In West Africa, Nigeria has recorded 8,915 cases, followed by Ghana, which has seen 7,616 cases. Meanwhile, the countries with the most fatalities are Egypt with 845, Algeria 630, and South Africa 577. The coronavirus pandemic is a major threat to developing countries' efforts to meeting their development goals. This is according to Chairperson of the African Union, Cyril Ramaphosa. Addressing a UN meeting on how to handle the pandemic's economic fallout, the South African president repeated a call for debt to be halted for a period of 2 years and for debt relief. In April, the G20 group of leading economies, including China, offered to suspend bilateral debt payments by dozens of the world's poorest countries for the rest of the year. At the same meeting, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, called on commercial creditors to join the debt relief efforts.
Coronavirus pandemic will have far-reaching impacts on human health, livelihoods, security, economic development, as well as social stability. The pandemic presents a very real threat to our collective ability to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. This is particularly the case for developing countries. As we mount a global effort to overcome COVID-19 crisis, we need to ensure that the progress that we have made towards the realization of the SDGs is not reversed. In particular, we call on developed countries to meet their commitments to supporting developing countries in the key areas of the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. In this time of crisis, we need to be innovative, and as Justin Trudeau said, think out of the box in the deployment of resources to both fighting the COVID-19 and sustainable development. In this regard, developing country debt is a foremost concern, and especially to my continent, Africa. Africa is, however, encouraged by the collaboration of the G20, the Bretton Woods institutions, and the UN towards finding a solution to developing country debt and sustainability and related issues. South Africa supports the call of the African Union for a debt standstill for 2 years. We support the allocation of more IMF special drawing rights to help central banks, the corporate sector, and small-medium enterprises to withstand the shocks caused by the pandemic.
Meanwhile, Musa Faki Mahatma, the chairman of the African Union Commission, has condemned the killing of an armed black man in the U.S. city of Minneapolis, calling it murder. 46-year-old George Floyd died in police custody on Monday. A white police officer was filmed kneeling on his neck, despite him saying that he could not breathe. His death has led to a series of demonstrations across the country, including in Minneapolis, where there is a large Somali community. Mr. Mahatma said the commission rejected the continuing discriminatory practices against black citizens of the United States of America, asking the government to ensure an end to discrimination based on ethnicity or religion. Well, South Africa is set to open up its economy as most economic sectors, including mining and manufacturing, will fully resume operations from next month. Trade and Industry Minister Ibrahim Patel says this is the most significant reopening of the economy since the lockdown began because it opens up all core productive sectors. Africa's most industrialized economy has been largely shut since a nationwide lockdown began in late March. Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma also gave a breakdown of the Level 3 lockdown.
This is the most significant reopening of the economy since the lockdown began some 63 days ago. And it opens up all of our core productive sectors, from manufacturing to mining to all the productive services. It means that the country's steel mills and textile operations, the chemical plants, the plastic operations will all be able to operate at full capacity. The electronics and furniture and other sectors will all be able to produce both for the South African market and for export to the rest of the world. Level 3 opens up the rest of the finance sector, like microfinance and many other parts of finance, and all of retail that up to now has not been opened, whether it is the sale of appliances or furniture or electronic goods, all of the clothing industry, those are all open now through retail. There are a few limited exceptions which will be set out in the regulations and that my colleague has referred to, and I will come back to. It also keeps open all parts of the economy that is operated under Level 4. So all of agriculture and food production, whether it is livestock or crops, for export as well as for our own people. It keeps open the healthcare sector, the production of medicines and personal protective equipment, all the hygiene supplies, cleaning materials, hand sanitizers, and so on. And of course, the production of electricity and water and data services. When the lockdown was first announced by President Ramaphosa, the intention was to restrict the movement of all of us, to keep as many of us at home, except those who were undertaking the most essential services.
As per the announcement of the President, we will move the whole country of South Africa to risk level 3, which implies certain adjustments to our level 4 regulations. However, our state of national lockdown continues until such time that we have flattened the curve for a sustainable period. In this regard, our differentiated approach and risk levels will be directed by the advice we will receive from the Minister of Health and inputs from WHO, ministerial advisory experts, and various cabinet ministers. These levels are applicable at a provincial level, all metropolitan areas and districts within that province, unless a differentiated alert level is explicitly determined as a hotspot. And compatriots will remember that the President did mention the areas that are deemed as hotspots.
Still in South Africa, the opposition politician Julius Malema is asking citizens not to fall for what he describes as a trap of going to church, suggesting they will die after contracting coronavirus. Places of worship are set to reopen from the 1st of June after President Cyril Ramaphosa announced easing of lockdown restrictions to level 3, but only 50 or less people will be allowed inside at any time. Mr. Malema says the reopening of churches would expose worshippers to infections, urging religious leaders to keep them closed if they cared about the well-being of their people. He also advised members of his Economic Freedom Fighters Party not to attend worship, saying it's a setup. Some stories now away from the coronavirus pandemic. Rwanda's High Court has sentenced a former mayor to life in prison for his role in the 1994 genocide. Ladislas Ntaganzwa, who was arrested in the Democratic Republic of Congo 5 years ago, was found guilty of personally leading a series of massacres of Tutsi civilians, including an attack on a church where thousands had taken shelter. The former mayor of southern Inyakizu was also accused of orchestrating the rape of many women. Earlier this month, investigators tracking genocide suspects had a major breakthrough when the alleged financier of the genocide, Felicien Kabuga, was arrested in France. He is due to be tried at a tribunal in Tanzania. It also emerged last week that another top suspect, former Defense Minister Augustin Bizimana, had actually been dead for several years. Now, Amnesty International is accusing Ethiopia's military of extrajudicial killings, mass detentions, and torture. A report was released by the body which records crimes allegedly committed by soldiers throughout 2019. The same year, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to reforming the country. Now, Amnesty says the army executed 39 people in Oromia State since last year, January, with the victims including 4 members of the same family. It says the killings were carried out by forces from a military command post created to combat the Oromo Liberation Army, that's a rebel group operating in the region. The report also details mass arrests and re-education programs for suspected supporters of the armed group. Now, Justice and Correction Officer from the UN mission in Central African Republic, MINUSCA, is helping women detainees in the capital, Bangui, cope better with their prison conditions. She is one of the many active and veteran members of peacekeeping missions that the UN pays tribute to on May 29th, the International Day of United Nations Peacekeepers.
Justice and Correction Officer from the UN mission in Central African Republic, MINUSCA, visited Bimbo Prison in the capital, Bangui, to help women detainees cope better with their prison conditions.
Une fois que tu es entré en prison, les gens ont tendance à te discriminer.
We who work in the jail must show these female prisoners that prison is not an end in itself. Just because you're in prison doesn't mean you're a bad person. We choose women because this message can pass more easily with them, who are life-giving and educators.
The detainees in the Bimbo facility benefit from various training courses set up to rehabilitate them, such as making shoes, clothes, soap, or carrying key rings. These training courses also aim to facilitate the reintegration of these women after their release from prison into the society.
Ces formations leur permettent de gérer le stress carcéral.
These training courses allow them to manage prison stress because when you are in detention and you are confined all day in your cell, time becomes longer. There are negative thoughts, anxiety, prison weight. So to avoid all these, women engage in activities.
Bimbo is the site of the country's only sex-segregated women's prison. The prison was built in 1980 to hold 200 prisoners, although as of 2005, it only held 44, most of whom were pre-trial detainees.
You're watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Still to come on the program. Our Africa Tech segment takes a look at Nigeria in the COVID-19 era. Please stay with us. Welcome to our Africa Tech segment. As more services go online, broadband infrastructure and internet connectivity have been considered as dependable ways to resuscitate economies and meet the demands of the post-COVID-19 era. Last year, the Nigerian federal government set up a new national broadband plan for 2020 to 2025 to promote the dynamics of the Nigerian digital economy. The launch was targeted at achieving 70% broadband penetration by 2025. However, some analysts in the industry perceive the mandate as difficult given the current state of telecoms and broadband infrastructure in the country. We have here in the studio with us Ayowande Adalemo, the founder of Atmosphere, to discuss this further. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure being here too.
All right, tell us a bit more about this new national broadband plan.
Okay, so 100 pages, but let me try to summarize. So there are key pillars that the plan looked at. And the people involved in putting this plan together, put together by the Minister of the Digital Economy, they've done quite a good job in doing this. So there is a focus on infrastructure, which is a huge problem. A focus on policy, things like right-of-way, the cost of right-of-way by state government, which is a problem when you're trying to do fiber infrastructure, roll out to telecom masts across the country. They're looking at incentives to drive demand, content, local content. Universities being on a fiber ring and having internet access. Then they're also looking at the ability for the rural communities to get online. So in summary, that's what it is. And then it states certain guidelines and timelines for this to happen. As an example, 70% penetration, but 90% coverage. So if we have 70% penetration, but we have less than 70% coverage, that would defeat the purpose. So let's have 90% coverage of a minimum download of 25 megabits per second in urban centers and 10 megabits per second in rural centers by 2025. So those are some of the aspects of the broadband plan, but it's very detailed as to exactly how this is to be achieved. And it talks about collaboration and how all of these can come together so that by 2025, we can reach some of these goals that we have.
All right, with what we have now, do you think 2025, is visible?
No, it's not.
Why do you say so?
Because there's a lot that needs to be done in that sector.
And 5 years is
5 years is a short time. We've had this revolution in Nigeria in the last 20 years or thereabout, since the GSM started with the 2G services, and now we are with the 4G services. But services are still epileptic. Again, infrastructure is a problem. If you look at the 4G coverage, according to that plan, you will realize that 4G is just minimal and only in urban centers across Nigeria. And if we're going to have a digital economy, you need a very robust broadband infrastructure for that to happen. The thinking also has to be very different. So the plan is saying this is how we want to get there. The thinking has to be completely different from what the plan says. And what do I mean by the thinking? As an example, why do I need to put broadband internet access in the rural area? What is the purpose? Where are the smartphones that they will use? Where are the smart devices? Can they even afford it? The plan says by 2025, devices should be like 9,000 naira. How many households can afford 9,000 naira by 2025 when your per capita income in Nigeria is less than $2,000, right? So it means that there must be a rethinking of how we see the rural areas. So as an example, in an agrarian society, can we have broadband for commercial purposes so that we can aggregate? We saw online mangoes wasting in Benue the other day, right? So what we have a broadband platform where all the farmers can be aggregated on that platform. How many tons of mangoes do you have? When are you going to harvest them? And then there are those who process the mangoes, and there are those who market the mangoes, those who export the mangoes. So there's a value chain that broadband creates together. So for that reason, we can begin to now say, okay, let's put broadband in rural centers for specific purposes, for agriculture, for mining, for different. So in that way, broadband begins to help people in the economy to say, okay, I need a smart device to be able to participate in all of this. So it's not just getting a device for the sake of it. I'm getting a device because I want to participate commercially. And that's where it becomes viable.
All right, let's talk about the network operators. You know, how can they ensure full attainment of the targets in this new plan?
So it's going to cost a lot of money to attain this new plan. So network operators alone can't do this. Remember at the very first age, when they came in, there were a lot of waivers for voice. Those kind of waivers need to come back for broadband. We need to treat it like, I don't want to use the word subsidy, but we need to subsidize a lot of things for them. The plan says that we're going to spend a minimum of $5 billion in the next 5 years. How many operators can afford to get that kind of money into the economy, into rural areas? Where's the return on investment? What is the incentive from government for them to invest that kind of money? So it's not just a case of network operators alone. We have to look at this as a national emergency. Government, network operators, universities, the medical sector, agriculture, the mining sector, everybody has to come together to say, how is broadband valuable to my operations? And what am I contributing to ensure that the operators can get to where I'm going to? So villages, as an example, can say, you know what, I'm not going to take money from you to put your 4G base stations here, but we need 4G in this location. It has to be a collaborative effort. Otherwise, if we rely on network operators alone, I'd rather focus on where I'm going to make my money than a national patriotic broadband plan.
Yeah. Now, in this COVID-19 era, what are the gains, of this plan to the Nigerian economy?
So there's some aspects of the plan that has been implemented, but not fully. Okay. And COVID-19 has exposed us a great deal. As we speak, hundreds of small businesses are dead. Yeah. There are no palliatives, there are no measures, sadly. And it is because we believe in the brick-and-mortar system of doing business. If there was broadband infrastructure, and if it was affordable, that's another thing. The plan says that 1 gigabit of internet access will be around 390 naira. That's what the plan targets. Right. That's expensive, right? Yeah, it is expensive.
But 1 gig, for many telecommunications, you have 1 gig for 1,000 naira. And now you're saying 390.
Even at 390 naira is still pretty expensive for small businesses. Because 1 gig is not going to last you for a couple of... And you're spending 390 naira every other day, because if you put all the apps together to run a business, if you take the walls of business away, remote working, so you need a CRM, you need project management systems, you need Slack, you need Asana, you need all of this, and they guzzle a lot of bandwidth. Now, if you do that, it means that people are going to spend a whole lot more running remote operations, running virtual offices. If our target is 390 naira for 1 gig, I think we're not getting there. And COVID-19 has shown that we do need this kind of infrastructure. Otherwise, we will keep having to run to restart businesses that are dead and ensure that they keep working. I feel sorry for a lot of businesses now that they can't even think beyond the brick-and-mortar system.
All right, then. Thank you so much for speaking to us. We have the founder of Atmosphere Company, Ayowande Adelimo.
Yes,
Thank you for your
it's been a
thoughts on
pleasure
Network
too.
Africa. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's where we end the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke. Have a great weekend.